Windows 7 is much more user-friendly than Windows Vista. I don't like that.
Hi everyone, Omar here. Today we are diving into the challenge of installing Windows Vista Ultimate on modern hardware. Released in January 2007, Vista came 5 years after Windows XP and was later replaced by Windows 7. Essentially, we are exploring what might have been considered Windows 6 back in the day. So let's get started. As you can see, our setup is quite up to date. We're running an Intel i5-14600KF CPU paired with the ASUS Prime Z790-P Wi-Fi motherboard and 32 gigabytes of DDR5. So the big question is, can we make all this fancy hardware work with Windows Vista? Well, one major challenge when installing older operating systems like Windows Vista on modern hardware is USB support. Vista does not natively support the AHCI protocol, which now handles all USB traffic on newer motherboards. Even if USB 2 ports are available, these ports are now routed through a USB 3 controller, which makes them effectively invisible to Windows Vista. Without USB support, installing Vista from any USB storage like a USB stick or external drive is simply not possible. But it can get worse if there is no PS2 port, which is very possible nowadays, especially with high-end Z790 motherboards. This is how the setup will look. No mouse cursor and of course no keyboard input. This is not the case with our setup. We do have a PS2 port, so we can install Windows Vista and add USB support later by using some backported drivers that surprisingly can handle even USB 3.2 chipsets. However, for some reason, these drivers won't work during the setup if they are slipstreamed into a custom Vista installation disk. So if we really want USB support during the installation, we have to use a PCIe to USB to adapter. I do have such an adapter and I will definitely use it. So now we have a PS2 keyboard and a USB mouse connected to a VIA6212 controller, which brings to the table the AHCI protocol for USB 1.1 traffic and the AHCI protocol, which handles USB 2 traffic. This is exactly what Vista was expecting in the USB department when it was launched. Even so, installing Vista from a USB stick is very unreliable. This method often ends with error messages. After all, we're dealing with the quirkiest Windows edition ever.
Raj, did you ever tell your sister about the time Sheldon got punched by Bill Gates?
Oh God, you're kidding.
Nope. Gates gave a speech at the university. Sheldon went up to him afterwards and said, maybe if you weren't so distracted by sick children in Africa, you could have put a little more thought into Windows Vista.
Now back to our installation. The most reliable way to install Vista is the original method by using an optical drive. Vista fully supports the AHCI protocol, so our SATA drives will be recognized without requiring any workarounds. In this scenario, the installation should be the same business as usual, unless there is a major issue with our hardware. For example, Vista might struggle with ACPI settings or the E cores and B cores of a 14th gen CPU. There is a good chance for things to go wrong, but guess what? The installation went smoothly right up until the end when Vista attempted to benchmark our system. At this point, we are asked to wait while Vista checks our computer's performance, but this test can't be completed. No worries, we just need to restart and create a new user account, and voila, this time we're in. So this is the crazy good looking Windows Vista Ultimate 64-bit running on almost the last generation hardware while using the original installation service pack 2 disk. Nothing is modified or patched. Now back to our earlier issue when the installation reached a dead end. This is related to Windows System Assessment Tool or WinSAT. When the CPU has more than 16 megabytes of L3 cache, WinSAT's memory speed test fails because its buffer size is hard-coded and unable to handle larger caches. While it's possible to manually run the memory test with an adjusted buffer size, this workaround doesn't apply when assessing the system's overall performance. So we don't get that 5.9 maximum possible score showing up. However, I did manage to get a perfect score in Vista using a 13th Gen i3 processor, which has only 12 megabytes of L3 cache. Now let's dive into updates and drivers. This Z790 motherboard features a Realtek 2.5 gigabit Ethernet adapter. Might work in Vista, but on the official page only Windows 7 and newer drivers are listed. So it was much quicker to install a Realtek PCIe gigabit card, which is totally Windows Vista friendly. Actually, within 20 seconds, the driver was installed, everything else was configured automatically, and I was already online. Next, it was time to handle updates. For this, I used a legacyupdate.net, an alternative update server that delivers updates just like in the good old days. While several important updates were installed, not everything was covered. It's worth noting that Windows Vista has a server variant called Windows Server 2008. And here's the good news. Many updates designed for the server counterpart are compatible with Vista. By the way, Windows Server 2008 was supported until 2020 with additional extended security updates still being released. The last one is from October 2024. One critical Windows 2008 server update we need is KB4474419 from September 2019. This update is essential for enabling some backported drivers, including those required for USB 3 functionality. On my setup, this update also unlocked full compatibility with legacyupdate.net through Internet Explorer 9. But I'm not sure if this update is actually required. With all these updates, we are finally in a good position to deal with the universal serial bus. Adding USB 3X support to Windows Vista is surprisingly simple if you have the right drivers. Even better, I managed to find some signed drivers so they install seamlessly. For testing, I used a Kingston USB 3.2 external SSD, which can handle transfer speeds up to 1000 megabytes per second. These drives are not using the older USB mass storage protocol, but something called UACP from USB attached SCSI protocol. Of course, Vista is not aware of this protocol, but the USB 3X driver we used earlier came with a generic UACP driver, so it's enough to point to the same folder and everything will work right off the bat. We don't even have to restart. With the UACP driver installed, we can now check if we can get close to the advertised speeds of this drive, which will require more than USB 3.0 generic support. And yes, Crystal Disk Mark shows that our drive performs exactly as advertised. Everything is stable, so the USB 3X functionality in Vista works better than you would expect on such a modern motherboard with a Z790 chipset. Now that we are good with USB 3X, can we ask for more? How about using NVMe drives in Windows Vista? Can we? Yes, we can, especially if we grab the George King's archive of backported drivers. However, it's a bit more complicated than installing USB 3 drivers. The main challenge is that these drivers are not signed, and Vista does not provide a way to permanently disable driver signature enforcement. To work around this, we can manually disable a signature enforcement at each boot by pressing F8, or use a tool like Driver Signature Enforcement Overrider to sign the NVMe sys file, Once that's done, the NVMe driver should work just fine. Now back to the actual installation. The NVMe drive is just another unknown PCI device as far as Windows Vista cares. A tool like Hardware Info can be very helpful to check what's behind those unknown PCI devices. And once we know where our drive is hiding, we just can install the driver as usually. However, while I was installing this driver, I initially forgot to disable the signature reinforcement, which caused the installation to fail. No problem. After restarting and using the F8 method, the driver was automatically enabled and everything worked as expected. In the end, aside from the driver signature issue, NVMe drives work very well in Vista. Actually, using a third generation Western Digital NVMe drive, I achieved the exact read and write speeds advertised in the product brief. Honestly, we can't ask for more. In the end, let's talk about audio and video drivers. This motherboard features a Realtek LC A97 codec, which was recognized as an HD audio interface right from the first boot. A pleasant surprise. Interestingly, it didn't work out of the box on Windows 7, which you would expect to be more compatible. Anyway, for video, I initially used a 7900GS NVIDIA card, as it allows me to reboot this 14th gen configuration into Windows 98. Later, I switched to a GTX 980, which has official drivers for Windows Vista, and it simply works. No surprises in this department, except maybe the 3D Mark 2001 score, which wasn't the best compared to Windows XP. Overall, installing Vista on a modern PC isn't much of a challenge if you use SATA drives, as these are natively supported. If you don't have or can't use an optical drive, there is a lesser known method to start the installation directly from the installation drive. It involves some command line work, but it is effective, as I demonstrated in my previous Windows Vista video, so I recommend to check it out for more details. I guess that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time.